Hello, welcome guests and guest wines, and welcome to yet another edition of our Wine and Dine with Collins Fine Food. Today we bring you an Easter delight. Collins Fine Foods have yet again prepared another fine array of delicious dishes, and we have selected three marvellous wines to go side by side. So without further ado, can I check that we have the following wines with us? We have the Hunter's Offshoot. We have the El Cotto Reserva Rioja. And we have the Di Bortoli Deed Vat 5 Semillon. Wonderful. Okay, these are going to be served alongside the following dishes, and what a menu we have for you this weekend. So for starters, there's a choice of smoked salmon, griddled asparagus, or double baked goat's cheese. For mains, we have a choice of roasted turkey, stuffed leg of lamb, or aubergine and tomato gatto. And for puds, there's lemon meringue roulade, egg custard tart, or mini chocolate trio. Now then, that sounds all really, really fabulous. So now, without further ado, we'll go on to talking a little bit about the wines, wine tasting, and food and wine matching. The first wine that we have for you is the Hunter's Offshoot, and this is something, it's a little bit special. It's something that I personally like. At the moment, it seems to be this sort of style of wine seems to be in vogue, and I hope you find it interesting as well. I mean, one thing you may have already noticed on here is that it's got a crown tap rather than a cork or a screw top. And also, you'll see in here, if you can see into the bottle, hopefully I'll just turn it around to see if you can see. There we go. In there, look, can you see in there? Look, it's still got all the yeast in there because it hasn't been filtered at all. This is down to the way this wine has been made. I'm going to give it a bit of a shake up because I think it's great to have that. You don't have to, but if you like a little bit of savouriness or you want a bit more complexity in with this particular style, then I would suggest do it, but not too vigorously because it is a sparkling wine and we don't want to lose all that lovely wine by it spraying out everywhere when we open the bottle. Now, this style of sparkling wine is called a pet nat. And what this represents is the old name of it was the ancestral method of making sparkling wine. And it's probably the way that sparkling wine was originally made, or sort of came around, really, you know, because it was something that came by accident. Sparkling wine originally in wines was seen as a bit of a fault, really, rather than it being something to celebrate. And lots of research went in to try and prevent this occurring, but eventually people worked out what was happening. There was saw that there was an enjoyable side to sparkling wines, and thus it was maintained. So this was the original way that sparkling wines were made and produced for sale until other methods were not discovered, but were created after more time and research of how to get things right, and also to remove the sedimentality. This is called the lees, by the way. This is from the fermentation, and it's kept in here. So in some respects, there's still stuff going on in here. This is still a live wine. There's still things being created in there. So to make this wine, you're making it as a still wine. It's made from the Sauvignon Blanc grape variety. And whereas that's usually, it's usually made as a still wine. It's a marvellous wine that comes from Marlborough. This is from Marlborough as well. This is Hunter's. Jane Hunter is an Australian lady who lives out in New Zealand, has got herself an OBE for her wine duties to winemaking. Fantastic thing to have, eh? And she's now created this wonderful little number. So like I said, it's made from Sauvignon Blanc, but instead of it being a still wine, it's been made into a sparkling wine, but not just a sparkling wine, it's been made into one that's a pet nat or ancestral method of making the wine. So I'm going to try and open it without it going everywhere. I always say this with sparkling wine with a little bit of caution, but even more so because it has got this top on it. And oh, it's going to go. And always say that with a sparkling wine, if it starts to get a little bit lively, always just tilt it. And as you can see here, as I've tilted it, it has stopped fizzing out. The chances of it continuing to pour over the top, if I'd have left it upright, are quite high. And rather than a flute, you can put it in the flute, no problem with a flute. But today I thought I'd just put it into a white wine glass. There's no particular reason, it's just me. I just fancied the idea of putting it in there, because with sparkling wines, you don't always have to have a flute. And in this case, I decided that it was better not to. I just wanted it in here, maybe just to capture a little bit more air in there to aerate it and get some of the oxygen going in there. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the wine, so we know a bit about it. So, like I say, it's Hunter's offshoot Pet Nap, and this is Jane Hunter who runs the estate. It's family run, and the fruit from this is Sauvignon Blanc. It's from a small parcel from their Bridge block, which is selected to make the wine. They chose this vineyard because they say it represents certain characteristics that they want to get into the wine. And what they're kind of wanting here is they wanted this nice cloudy, fruity, zesty wine with this sort of savoury tang to it. That's what they're sort of going about here. And like I say, what you're doing is to make this wine, as I was just mentioning earlier, is you're making the wine as a still wine. And as it's still fermenting, you transfer that fermenting wine into the bottle, which we have here. And you put in, like I say, the yeast is still in here. So there's a portion of the yeast is going into the bottle as well. And then you're popping a crown top on, and it continues to ferment. And with a fermentation, usually the CO2 gas is released. But in the case of sparkling wines, it's trapped. So it's actually trapped in here to make the fizz. There is other methods of making sparkling wine. One easy way is what's often referred to as the bicycle pump method, and that is where you just get a still wine and you pump CO2 gas into it, much like your soda streams of the 1970s. Anybody as old as me will remember those, and we all thought it was a technological delight to have it in our homes. And that's that kind of method, though, is much a method that can be used in very cheap, easygoing sparkling wines. Another method to make sparkling wine is called the tank method, and this is where you make a still wine in tank, but then under pressure in the tank you re-ferment it in there by adding a yeast and sugar solution. You re-ferment it under pressure, and then you filter it off and you pop it in bottle. Another method, which is the method that's used for champagne and English sparkling wine and a lot of other wines, is called the traditional method. The traditional method, I suppose, this is where over time folk have learned to master the art of sparkling wine. And this is, again, you make a still wine, but then you transfer the still wine into bottle, and you have the yeast solution in the bottle, and it re-ferments in the bottle. And then after it's re-fermented in the bottle, the yeast that you find in near the lees, it's then racked off of that, where this is where the bottle is eventually tipped upside down, its neck is frozen, and it pops out in a ball of ice, and it's nice and clear and clean. And then it's got the typical mushroom cork put in it. So I suppose this is kind of like the halfway out to a traditional method wine, in that, yes, it started off being made as a still wine in tank, but before it finished that process, it was put into the bottle, and it's continued its fermentation in here, and it hasn't had that yeast removed from it, so it's still got that kind of tangy edge to it. This kind of style also really is meant to be drunk young as well, so it's picking up on that lovely freshness that what it has. So just looking at the wine itself, as you can see, it's cloudy. Now, most wines that we have are clear, and they're made to be clear. That's the purpose of them. They're usually fine, they're filtered, or even if they're not filtered, they're left to settle for a while in either the tank or the oak barrel, and then they're what's called racked off of that lees, of this yeast that you find in the bottle of in the bottom of the bottle. But this one is purposely supposed to be a little bit cloudier, and I like it because it gives it that little bit more of interest to it. So you're looking at it, it's got a sort of a very much like it looks like freshly squeezed lemon juice in some respects, or like a beer, I suppose, like a craft beer that you can get nowadays. And then again, with all sparkling wines, it does have a little bit of fizz to it. The fizz is called the mousse, and the bubbles are referred to as beads. And just looking at it, it looks nice, it looks pleasant, it looks welcoming. And giving it a sniff, and straight away, I'm getting this welcome, real waft of lemon citrus, and it's almost like sniffing a freshly squeezed lemon in there. But there's something else, and that something else is that lees, it's that yeastiness, it's that savoury side to it. And I'm picking that up, and it's sort of like a doughy, bready side. It's not too invasive, but it's there, and it's giving it some interest going on, and I'm liking it, and I think it's great. And maybe a bit of grapefruit in there as well, and an underlying maybe some tropical fruits going on in there. It all smells very, very inviting, very fresh. So let me give it a taste. So, right, so drinking wine, it may be a way to just fill up your glass right to the top, but I would recommend not to. Probably fill your glass to about here. That's probably best for drinking wine. But you know, some people, it's up here drinking wine. If that's what you want to do, that's what I want to do. My recommendation is to have it a little bit less. Now, drinking wine, you fill your glass up, pop it in your mouth, drink it, job done. The world is right. To taste wine, it's just taking a step back and just thinking for a moment what it is that's going on in your glass. And so it's about beginning to recognize those individual nuances that go to make the construct of the wine itself. You know, at first, it may be that you just smell it, it just smells of wine. But hopefully, gradually, as you keep having a sniff and a taste, that other things will start to just pop out and remind you of various maybe fruits or flowers or other kind of day-to-day foods or non-food products, because something might taste a little bit earthy or a little bit of soil or maybe even rocks. You know that some of the flavors and aromas are there to remind you of. But in this instance, it's a lot of citrusness going on there. There's a lot of citrus fruits, a lot of freshness. It's really appealing. So that's what I'm doing at first. I'm sniffing. It's called the nose, if that's what you want, sort of the technical, if that's the word for it. The nose is about just stopping, thinking, and giving it a sniff. You don't want to swirl this wine too much because you don't want to lose all that nice crispy freshness from the sparkling fizziness of the wine itself. So it smells lovely. It doesn't smell any faults in there. It smells nice. It's appealing. Okay, so now I'm going to taste it. Now, usually with wine, like I said, with wine drinking, you just drink the wine, swallow it, and that's fantastic. And the world is all right, and you've just done, you know, the job's done. With tasting it again, it's just taking a step back and just trying to pause for a moment to think about what it is that's going on from that glass into your mouth. Now, I'll show you how to do this, and then we're going to do it with all the wines. It's basically, I would just describe it as whistling backwards. It's sort of whistling backwards with the wine in your mouth. Don't put too much in, because sometimes the alcohol could tickle the back of your throat and make you want to cough. And so the result of that's not good, especially if somebody sat opposite you. And what you wanted to do then is whoosh the wine around your mouth a little bit like a mouthwash, and then swallow, and then pause and think about what it is that you've tasted. So I'll do it first and then have a go yourself. So I'm going to pop a little bit in my mouth. That is so inviting. That is so fresh. That is so clean. So what I've just done there, I've allowed the wine to settle in my mouth. And now this can be split into three parts. The first part is what's called the approach. And the approach, that's the initial reaction in the mouth. The initial reaction was citrus burst. It was freshness. It was this cleanness that came straight into my mouth, or as it's referred to, my palate. And then a second or so afterwards is what's referred to as the mid palate. And the mid palate here is where either there's time for the wine to have evolved, so you might pick up other nuances that are in the wine that you didn't get initially, or the wine could even fade a little. It depends on the actual wine. And then once you've swallowed the wine, this is referred to as the finish. And the finish is where the longer you can taste pleasant after flavors, this is where you can look at the quality of the wine and how appealing the wine was and whether you want to take another mouthful. Now on this, like I say, you've got this real citrus burst at the beginning, and there is this grapefruit freshness to it. And then as it just settles, you do then pick up some more of that savouriness, that yeastiness that's in there. And you don't get the yeastiness in your mouth. It's not like you're suddenly tasting this yeast and it's all dry and powdery and you're getting lumpy bits. It's just fine. It's just nice and fresh. And then after I'd swallowed it, there's a lightness to it, a real finesse. And again, it's sort of, that comes back on that sort of grapefruit, lemon, and maybe even a bit of lime going on in there that reminded me, I can still taste it now. And it's just lovely. So I'm just going to have another taste again. Well, there's just enough coating there from the bubbles. The fizz really do enhance that freshness, but they're not too evasive, because sometimes you can get a fizzy wine and it's just too frothy. It's just too, it can be too creamy, and the bubbles can be too lively that it fills your mouth up, and that by doing so it takes away, distracts you from trying to actually taste the actual wine itself. Well, this doesn't, and I just think it complements all that part of working together with those sort of citrus fruits in there. Now, I would say this was with the different foods. It will have different effects on the different foods that this goes with. Now on the starters, we've got things like, I would say, because it's fresh, but it's also tangy, and it's got those yeasty nuances in there. There's all the different aspects of different dishes you have. This will either highlight things in the dishes, or it will highlight the nice freshness or the citrus elements to this fizz. Now, I think with something like, because this has got this lovely fresh acidity, it's got those sort of citrus fruits that cut through there, this will work brilliantly with the cheese dish, because the cheese, it's got that nice sort of, double baked, so it'll be all nice and moussey in itself. It'll have a creamy texture to it, but there'll be a light, almost foamy, spongy sort of textural feel to it. But there's also that sort of slightly fattier side to it as well. And this freshness will just cut all the way through that, keeping that mouthfeel really fresh, while enhancing that sort of those cheesy flavors. And then once those cheesy flavors start to fade, you'll then get this nice, lovely sort of citrus fruit on the back of that. And I think that's really, really something that works really nice. And then I think in the smoked salmon, there's that savoury yeast element will work really nice with that sort of smoky elements of the fish, and complement one another. But again, you've got that nice freshness that goes through there. So rather than having a bit of a lemon drizzled on the fish, you've got this instead. This is your condiment of sorts. And then asparagus. Now, one of the tasting notes of Sauvignon Blanc is asparagus. So why not add some asparagus there as well with it? It only then goes to enhance those flavors both in the actual vegetable itself and within the wine. And then also in the dishes, there's some tomato in there. Tomato leaf is often found in Sauvignon Blancs. So this enhances those flavors, but also tomatoes are very acidic. So that acid in the tomato and in the wine work well. Now, you always think if you're adding acid from a wine and you're adding acid from a dish, surely it's all going to be acid and not very nice, but that's not the case. What does happen is that it complements and it makes the acidity softer, and it gives that textural appeal to actually the dish and also to the wine itself. So that'll work really, really well. And also in Sauvignon Blanc, there's a herbal side to it as well. There's that sort of, there's slightly herbal notes there, these nice green notes, and they'll work well with the tomato, they'll work well in the salsa, but also what will work well in the salsa will also be, you come back to the acidity and the fizz, because within the salsa, a little bit of spice element there, maybe a little bit of chili spice going on in there. And then so this will come in and have a cooling effect on that. And just cool that down, that salsa down, so you get this lovely spicy salsa condiment, but then it'll then be cooled down by what's going on in your glass, so they're working in tandem as well. And then after that, just having a nice slugful will cleanse your palate and ready for the next dish. So I'm just going to have another slugful myself to cleanse my palate, and then we're going to move on to the next wine and the next dish. I mean, that's lovely to just drink by itself. And I'm now imagining myself, I'm getting there, I'm trying to get in the zone of remembering warm days, sunshine, sat in the garden. This chilled, sat outside, fantastic. Having it with one or two little dishes, some nibbles would be fantastic as well. But I think with today and the starters, this is a really good way to start the dish, to start with, to complement the dishes that we have on the menu, and also just to, it enlivens your palate. It really gets it set up. It really gets it watering. It gets your mouth watering for more, which is great because that will set the scene for enjoying the food. So cheers. I'm just going to put that to one side, and now I'm going to bring over the red, which is the El Cotto. It's the Reserva. It's a Rioja wine. It's fantastic. It's something that we've recently just got in store. It was a popular wine that Richard Granger Wines had in Jesmond, and as some of you will know, Alistair, who ran Richard Granger's, decided to put his feet up and go into retirement late last year. From there, the shop sadly closed after 50 years of trading, but we took on the soul, let's say, yes, the soul of Richard Granger, and we've now added a lot of the wines that Alistair had into our portfolio and onto our online shop, and El Cotto is one of them. So shall we taste it? I've decanted it, and I think with red wine, it's best to decant the wine for at least an hour, and I've popped it in this glass decanter here, but it doesn't have to be a specific decanter for wine. It could just be a jug with an open top. It's all really about just getting a little bit of air to the wine, allowing it to breathe, allowing some oxygen to get there, and this will open up the volatiles, release them for you to enjoy by smelling and also by tasting. So here we are, we've got a lovely red wine. I would describe that as ruby. It's quite full coloured. It's got quite a lot of purple hints going on in there as well, so it's suggesting it's fairly young, but I do believe it's from 2015, so there is some age going on here as well. So with a red wine, the difference between red and white, obviously there's a colour component. With white wine, you tend to get the grapes, you squeeze them off their skins, and then you ferment the juice. With a red wine, if you did that, you would end up with a white wine because most red grapes are white inside. There is one or two that's red all the way through, but most are white inside. So to make a red wine, you need to ferment the grapes on their skins. And this is what they've done here. This is a grape variety called Tempranillo. It's one of the main varieties used in Rioja. Rioja is in Spain. It's towards, I'd say, the northeastish sort of area, not too far north. It's far enough from the coast and surrounded by mountains at the top to prevent it from getting really any coastal influence. So it's a warm area. It's just right for the grape varieties here. And you've got Garnacha, Tempranillo, and one or two other red grape varieties, and some whites as well. But it makes for wines that tend to be full, ripe, got a sense of richness about them, a lovely texture, and often smooth. I like Riojan wines because I think they're always more or less really well made. You get really good value for money, particularly for the way they're made, the aging requirements, the use of oak. Most other areas that make fine wines to this sort of standard, they do charge far more, whereas in Rioja, it's still somewhere where you can get decently priced fine wine from. That won't always be the case, but at the moment, it's still somewhere where you can pick up a bit of a bargain at times. So here we've got a Reserva, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll do a little taste of the wine, and then we can talk about it. So it's got this nice, I would say, kind of a deepish ruby colour going on there. And then on the nose, when I give it a sniff, I could definitely smell that oak in there. There's some lovely oaky spice, but it's not overdone. You know, there is wines, particularly in the past, that were overdone. There were just too much oak going on in there. There were just too much wood, and it just drowned out all those lovely fruits that were getting masked by an overindulgence of clumsy, what I would say is clumsy winemaking, really. But here I'm getting this spice. There's that woody spice there, but underneath there's this lovely fruits coming through: raspberry, blackberry, strawberry. And strawberry is always a particular fruit that comes through from the find with Rioja. And it's a lovely sweet strawberry, almost like the tin strawberries that you could get again from the 1970s. But probably not as mashed up or with as much sugar on as they came in, but it's got the essence of that really concentrated strawberry. There's that sort of spice that goes on there from the oak, and then there's a real nice lift in there. There's some that sort of raspberry fruit going underneath, and the raspberry, it's almost like the acidity that comes from the raspberry is coming through as well to give it that sort of fresh element to it as well. And then having a taste. That's nice. One of the first things, my first impression is how fresh it is. Because when you get somewhere from that's going to be fairly warm, there's a chance that as the grape ripens, it accumulates lots of sugar, but the acidity in the grape starts to fall. Here, they've managed to keep that acidity in there in good form. And it's delightful because it's giving this real freshness to the actual wine. And it's lifting to the fore, presenting the fruits more than it is the oak. Now I'm getting the oak, it's trickling through there, it trickles all the way through the wine. I'm getting all that kind of spicy edge to it that travels from the start to the beginning, and even on the finish I can taste it. But more than that, I can taste the fruit, and that's fantastic, and it lifts it up really, really well. Now, just have another taste. And another thing I'm getting in there that struck me is the floral side. As I swish it around my mouth, I'm getting this nice, it's like I would say like pink flowers in the sunshine. I know that sounds a bit poncy, but that's kind of what immediately hit my mind. It was like being outside, so it's being outside in a garden, you're surrounded by pink flowers, maybe even peonies or roses or something there, and the sun's shining, and maybe they've recently been watered and they're giving off a scent, and you're getting some of that on the palate. And that's really nice because it just really complements that. It's complementing the fruit, but it also works well with that oak because it kind of gives it this kind of sense of opposites attract kind of thing. And both are working with this acidity flowing through, and it kind of lifts them, it keeps it fresh, and it keeps my palate fresh. Now, El Coto itself is a bodega, and a bodega is Spanish for an estate, a wine estate, or sometimes often like the French I would call it a domain or a chateau. It was founded in the early 70s, I think around 1970 itself. And they have got themselves very established. They get their grapes from all over Rioja, but it's mainly from their own vineyards, because Rioja used to be, and still is a little bit, but not so much as it used to be. It used to be quite separated in that you got the wine producer and then you got the grape grower. And the producer then used to buy the grapes off of growers and then make the wines. And then the wines were all about an aging regime, which still occurs, and this is which this wine has undergone as well. But things have changed in recent years, where a lot more wine producers also own their vineyards as well, and the guys at El Cotto do that. These are from Tempranillo. I said that's the grape variety, and they're bush vines. So as you well know, that a lot of vineyards are you'll get rows of trellised vines. Well, that does happen in Rioja, but also in Rioja they have things that's called bush vines. The bush vines are not trellised. They're as they suggest, they are more of a bush, and they're closer to the ground. And this is to help to protect them from the sun, but equally because the nights tend to be cold, that the heat from the ground radiates up and it keeps the grapes warm at night and helps them to continue to ripen through the night as well as the daytime. And these bush vines are between 35 and 55 years old. So they could be classed as old vines. Old vines is a buzzword that gets put about these days. Sometimes it has no meaning whatsoever. People just use it because it sounds good. But again, in recent times, people are now beginning to define what is actually an old vine. And in South Africa, they start off at 35 years. They're now looking at as a requirement. And in some countries, I think it probably is Spain, where it's deemed as over 50 years and older. And so this could be classed as a proper old vine wine. Now, old vine wine, it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, generally, most old vines are not that good and not that productive, and they tend to get grubbed up and replaced by younger vines. But with some vineyards and some vines, they're seen as they get older, they just get better. And when they get better, by means of getting better, is that the fruit becomes more concentrated. There's something special about it. There's a bit more harmony going on in there. The wines tend to have this just to have a better quality about them, but tend to make less. And so you get this wonderful scenario of you can make less wine, but you can make better wine, and therefore, it's more attractive, and people will more likely want to buy it. And this is kind of what we've got here. So we've got something that's got some really good fruit to it, and then the guys here then have gone on to age it. We'll talk about it in a minute. So just saying that, so El Cotto, they've been going, that's about 50 odd years. I think they've got really established in the Rioja region, where I've mentioned that they've got their own vineyards, and they've got these bush vines. Now, to age it, there's a process here. This process has been going on for well, a good few centuries now, and it was kind of I suppose it was adapted from the French, and the French mainly in Bordeaux. And it's all about how you age the wine in oak. Now, they have a system here, which starts off with wines that are termed as Hoven, and Hoven are just everyday fresh wines that often not see any oak whatsoever. The wines that if you go to Rioja and you go to the tapas bars, you'll get served a glass probably this sort of size, but often to the top, costs you about 50 cents. And it's just wonderful wine, and it's chilled. It's usually chilled, and you have it with the tapas. It's fantastic to have out there. The next along in the category is Crianza. Crianza wines, the requirement is you have to spend a year in oak and then a year in bottle aging before release. The next in line, which is the wine we've got here today is the reserver. And reservers have to spend at least a year in oak and then 2 years aging before release. Then after that, there is another category called the Grand Reserver, which El Cotto do, and we do have in stock. And that has a minimum requirement of 5 years aging, where 2 of those years at least have to have been in oak. Now, the wine I have today, this producer has gone a little bit further than that, because what they've done is they've aged this in oak rather than just being a year. It's at 18 months in oak. So they wanted to get a little bit more of that spiciness in there. And it's also been all about American oak. There's 2 kinds of oak that tend to go into Riojan wines, American and French. Traditionally, it's been American rather than French, but French has also come in recent years. The differences in the oak is that the American one tends to have more of a sweeter appeal to it, whereas the French, you get that more pencil shaving, maybe a little bit of vanilla sort of side to it. I think the American oak works really well with Tempranillo grape, because Tempranillo grape has that sort of raspberries, blackberry, strawberry fruits in there, and so the American oak really just works. It's made to go with it. So this has just been put into American oak barrels. It's had no French oak, but it's gone for the French size of the 225 litre, which is quite small in itself. So that means that they have wanted to get some of that oaky appeal in there, and that's kind of what they're wanting to do to complement the wine. But like I said, tasting it doesn't drown it out the fruits. It doesn't do a disservice to this wine at all. I think it works really, really well. So it's I would say it's a high quality wine made to traditional methods of what you would expect from a Riojan wine. Now, I think with the actual food, this is why you need the fruit to stand out there, because I find with meaty dishes, it's the fruit that really complements the meat. It really lifts that savouriness out. It really provides an extra element of juiciness to the meat and its quality of the meat. Whereas I think the savoury side, the oaky side, works a treat with things like the vegetables, or like in this case, we've got the aubergine and tomato gatto, and I just think that's where the oak plays, is the sweetness of that oak. The sweetness of it kind of provides a sort of complementary side to that savouriness that comes through from the vegetables, but also because there's also a fruity side to vegetables, particularly because the tomatoes in there as well. It enhances that. It gives that sort of slight sweet, spicy quality, whilst again giving that freshness there, that acidity that goes in there, which will also make the wine feel fuller, feel more textured, feel smoother, and you can't go wrong with that at all. And things like also, I think with turkey tends to be a drier kind of meat, and so this juicy fruit, this freshness, this zippiness lifts that meat. It enlivens it. It gives it a further appeal that alone, I think, the turkey alone will be fabulous. It's got a nice roast to it. It's got those, the roast itself gives it that slightly caramelized sweet edge to it as it is, but there's the dryness to the meat, and I think with a wine like this, it just lifts that, it enhances it, it just brings it out far better than when it's just on its own, and this is what this is made for. And also with a wine like this, and then with red wines, the thing that I haven't touched on at the moment is with red wines, because of the skins and because of the oak, there's a thing called tannin. And tannin is that thing that dries your mouth, and that's often what puts people off of red wines. There's probably been given a goldfish bowl full of red wine that's been served at the wrong temperature, because when we think of red wine, we think of room temperature. Room temperature means to a red wine about 16 to 18 degrees, and often with a lot of red wines you can chill down a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. I only say don't chill a red wine if it's got lots and lots of tannin in it, because that's all you'll taste. It'd be like drinking a cold stewed cup of tea, which was not good. But in this case, the tannins here they're there, but they're very smooth, they're very ripe. And I just think this wine just slight, if you just give it about 10 minutes, just give it a little bit of cool in the fridge, then bring it out and just let it stand and let it stand in the decanter. I just think it just works so well because that enhances the fruit, it enhances that freshness, and also the tannins here, they're not evasive. I'll just taste again. They're drying. They go the sweep across my tongue. They dry the tip of my tongue. But the acidity just goes whoosh and washes it all nice and clean. So it's nice to drink by itself. There might be some people who find the tannins, even at this level, something that's just still too dry for them. In that case, just keep having it with the food. With the food, it'll be absolutely delightful to have. But I think on its own, it's got that quality as well. And cheers with this one. Right, so finally, we're going to move on to puds, and we're going to have a sweet wine. And the wine we have got for you for this Easter treat is from Australia. It's a screw top, and it's a very well-known family out there, the De Bortolis. And this is a grape variety called Semillon. So I'm just going to pour out a sample. And as you can see straight away, it's got some nice colour to this wine. Now, to make a sweet wine, is like everything else. There's lots of different ways you can do it. You could just get a still white wine, and you could just add in some unsweetened grape juice, or often referred to as Sous Reserve, and add it to it, give it a stir, and voila, there you go. You've got your sweet wine. But there are other ways, and the better ways of doing it. One is you can leave the grapes to hang on the vine as long as possible to get them sweeter and sweeter. So it's like I say, the longer they're left in the sun, the more sugar they get, the acidity drops, so you have to be careful of that. But often grapes are chosen that maintain or already have a good level of natural acidity to them, so that balances out. Sometimes they're even left longer than that, and on the vine they're left to actually raisin, and this sort of dehydrates them. It gets rid of a lot of the water and just dehydrates a bit, concentrates the sugars. And this can also be done by picking the grapes that are very sweet already off the vine and then drying them on mats. Another way is to begin fermenting the wine, and part way through the fermentation, you stop the fermentation happening. What's happening in the fermentation is the yeast in there is eating the sugar and converting the sugar into alcohol. So somewhere along the line, you get to a certain level of alcohol, you decide that's fine. So then you stop the fermentation. You either do that by chilling, and this makes the yeast inactive, or that you can do by a method which is called fortification, where you add alcohol spirit, and the alcohol spirit actually kills the yeast. So therefore, you're left then with a certain level of alcohol, but also there is sugar in there that's not being converted to the alcohol by the yeast, and so the wine remains sweet. Another way is wines are referred to as ice wines, and ice wines are, when they're made naturally, they can also be made artificially as well. In a winery, is when the grapes are left to freeze on the vine. So this is usually in countries where it gets a little bit chilly towards autumn, and the grapes are picked while they're frozen, and then they're squeezed. So what's happened is then rather than water running out, the water is separated in ice. So that's removed. And again, a bit like, I suppose, like the raisin, the opposite, where you get the warm environment, is that you're left with a very concentrated, high in sugar grape, and that's made into a dessert wine, a sweet wine. Or you can make it by how this wine has been made, which is by a method called, it's actually a fungus, which is called botrytis. But it's often referred to as noble rot. Now, most times, that a winemaker doesn't want rot to get onto the grapes. It's one of the things that affects grapes, and it can affect them quite badly. And once it takes place, it can spread very, very quickly and ruin a lot of the crop. But in some circumstances, this is actually encouraged. It's encouraged here. This is grapes, Semillon grapes that are grown in a place called Riverina in Australia. It's in New South Wales. It's above Victoria. It's a really large area. They make a lot of wine in this area, but they also make a lot of outstanding wines, and they also make these very good sweet wines. And how they make them is that you need ripe grapes, and in the morning you need like mist or fog, something that produces high humidity, and this humidity gets on the grapes. And on the grapes there's also this botrytis sort of living on there as well. So together this encourages the fungus to spread, and what it does is it starts to spread onto the grapes. It starts to pierce the grape skin. Then in the afternoon you need nice sunny afternoons, and as the sunny afternoons it dries up all that moisture, but it also, because now the grape skins are pierced, it starts to evaporate with the water, and it concentrates the sugars in there. So when you actually then look at the grapes, they don't look very appealing. They look rotten, and you think, well, I wouldn't want to taste them, but they actually are very, very, very sweet, and they make these lusciously sweet wines, and they're just fabulous. And you can see here, it's got a bit of colour, and it's fabulous to taste. Now, I will give it a taste, and then hopefully you guys are also tasting as well. So immediately, smelling it on the nose is very, very pronounced. You don't really need to take a big sniff of it. It's just there. It's like, oh wow, it's got that very inviting smell to it. And what I get tropical. I get things like apricot. There's honey going on there. There's maybe some yellow flower going on. And I also think with botrytis, you get another side. You get this herbal side, or tobacco. And maybe the easiest way to think of it is a cigarette packet. You open a cigarette packet, you lift up the foil in the cigarette packet and give it a sniff. There's that tobacco smell there, that dry tobacco. And often I find botrytis has that whiff about it in there. But it works really well. It's not like, oh, this smells of peaches and Park Drive. It's got something much more going on in there. But it is very complex. There's lots and lots going on the nose just to keep sniffing it and keep you interested and think, wow, what is going on? And there is that you don't smell sweetness, but you can often have an indication that a wine's going to be sweet because of the ripeness that you're actually smelling. And I smell a lot of ripeness here. There's a lot of full fruit, and even just swirling it, it almost feels like there's a weight to the wine. So I'm going to give it a taste. Oh my, that is just lovely. You get that, there is a weight. It's like a curve ball. It's like this curvy, smooth, silky ball of loveliness in your mouth. And you're getting those apricots, you're getting peaches, you're getting this tropical fruit. There's almost a little bit of burnt sugar going on in there in the background as well. There's a herbal side to it, but there's also this lovely freshness. This freshness is, again, clean as a whistle. It keeps your palate clean. Nothing sticks to you, nothing sticky. It's just lovely. It goes down really, really well. And that's wonderful to have. Now, this was made, the fruit apparently was ripened slowly over the summer months to allow the conditions to be right for the rain to fall and then to get the botrytis in there. And what they've also done is they've put a little bit of oak, when it's gone into the winery, they've put a little bit of oak in, and this oak has just gave it that touch of spice, of vanilla. But again, a bit like the Rioja, it doesn't intrude, it complements, it works with it, it works together as a team to make this wine as wonderful as it is. And the Di Bortoles, they've been going right from, I think it's around the turn of the 20th century, the 1920s, Italian immigrants who came over from the Italian Alps to settle in Australia. They grew vines, but I think originally they sold them onto other producers and started making their own. And why this is called the Dean VAT5 is Dean is actually a name of one of the Bortoli family, and he made this VAT series. And the VAT series is where he went around selecting various grapes and making them into selected wines. And it was from the vats that he numbered. So he went around and numbered the vats and said, this one will make this wine, this number will make that wine. And this is VAT 5. So VAT 5 was the Semillon that he got, what was botrytised, it was sweet, from the vineyards, and thought, well, this is going to make a top-notch dessert wine, which it does, and this is why it's referred to as that. And a very, very good job they've done of it too. Now, Di Bortoli, like I say, they're still going on today as a family concern, and they do a really fabulous range of wines. We also have a range of their stills as well, so do look on our website and check them out. We're happy if you have any questions about any of the wines or any of the wines you've had today, then do get in touch. Right, so with the food, what will this do? Well, I mean, for one, I just think with any dessert wines, you can have them as a dessert themselves. Just fabulous. They're just really, really nice to have. And like I say, the acidity in them always enables you to cleanse your palate and not feel that you just got this sticky mouthful in there. Now, I just think that it works very differently with different sides of it. There's citrus notes in here. The citrus notes, I think, will really work with the lemon meringue. They will bring it out, the flavours in the pud, but also it will complement the wine itself. And I think the botrytis side and the little bit of oak that's in there will work with the egg custard tart. And one will, I just think that because in egg custard tarts, I tend to think of things like lemon, I tend to think of vanilla, and this is what we're going to get in this wine. And it's all about the sweetness in here that will bring out that chocolatey creaminess in the chocolate trio, that if anybody's chosen that. But equally, because the chocolate trio is creamy, and that can be quite a mouthful, quite textured, quite layered, quite sticky, you've got the acidity here to cut through that, to then clean that away, ready for the next mouthful. And again, just enjoy this by yourself. As it's opening up, I'm getting more and more, there's floral notes coming out there, there's more, there's the tropical, the fruit is just coming out, it just smells so beautiful. And there's that little herbal side, it's like, it's like being in a peach orchard or something like that on a summer's day. And just so fresh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, that's it. That's the wines, and hopefully you've enjoyed them as much as I have. Hopefully you've enjoyed the dishes from Colin's Fine Food. If you want to know more about Colin's Fine Food or about us, Guess Wines, then please sign up to our newsletter. You can do this through our website on www.guesswines.com, where you can stay in touch. We'll keep you informed of other events coming up, other wine and dines. You can also check us out on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the like. To stay in touch with us. It'd be great if you do. It's also great if you can give us some feedback, some comments on your day, on your food, on your dishes, on your wine. They're always great to hear about as well. So thank you once again. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you again in the not so distant future. And I would just like to say cheers.